I'm an entrepreneur. I started my company in 2001, disrupting the barcode technology in logistics, replacing it with RFID. So I'm a true living and breathing disruptor, a provocateur, somebody that works with large enterprises to change things. So I wrote the book for a few reasons. One is because there is a lot of apathy in the world. I hear when I work with employees of large companies. So if I can bring two examples to establish that case, think about Apple Computers. It's a computer company that became a music company, disrupted everything in the world of music. Then it became a phone company, disrupted everything in the world of phones. Then it became an iPad company. When Apple started going into the phone business, many phone companies thought it would fail. So disruption isn't going to happen unless, innovation isn't going to happen unless we disrupt. So there's some points here for my colleagues that are facing behind, but you can see the point of it. But it's really in order, the book was written and it talks about all the different stakeholders for us to disrupt in order to innovate. So for those of you sitting through the sessions today, you've heard going from the impossible to the possible. And especially in India, and I invest in the US, Europe, India, China, so I can speak, fairly confidently about some of the issues that we have in different parts of the world. So one of the ways that we have to think about entrepreneurship is that we can't have limitations and boundaries. So as entrepreneurs, we can play it safe. We can say there's a large mobile consumer base in India. What are some applications I can build? Or there's so much brilliance in the country to develop the next big thing, right? So the question is, what are the game changers? And the only way we can do that is by disrupting things. And there are many things you've heard throughout the course today, but I also hear a lot in India, skepticism, pessimism, things that worry me about, well, if I have an idea in India, it may not work in the rest of the world. Entrepreneurship works everywhere in the world, right? So that's partly why we wanted to set this up. And everybody has their membership card. Can I see it? Yes? Anybody does not have a card? For those who don't, there's a number in the back of your card, which will be your drawing card. This is a membership card that is perhaps, hopefully, going to provoke you next time that you look at it, whether you're sitting here as an entrepreneur, an employee of a big company, an investor, in any rank that we might be, how are you disrupting what you're doing in order to innovate? So hopefully you'll remember me every time that you look at the card. The topic of our debate today is innovation is happening more outside Silicon Valley than inside. This is a formal debate. We probably have the most number of presenters in any debate at NASSCOM. We're very proud of that. And we also have the most packed agenda. So I actually had to write it down to remind myself how we're going to do this. First, we're going to go through intros. Then we have two teams, which I'll talk about who's presenting which side, is going to give a 5-minute presentation, whether they're on the for debate side or against. And then we're going to let the teams huddle in each corner for a few seconds to perhaps get their defense better. Each team will then have a 5-minute chance to come back and rebuttal to establish their case. And then the audience gets to ask 6, 7 questions. Please limit it to about a minute. As you can tell, we have a lot to cover. Then the audience gets to vote on which team did a better job. Now, Pari and myself, we're the neutral party. At the end, we will each have about 5 minutes to let you know what our point of view is, but that'll be after the audience has voted. And after that, we will have our drawing, and 2 people will receive the book, and hopefully we'll have a very interactive session. I will happily bring the slide up if we forget what part of the process we're in. And Pari and myself are on the neutral side, on the defending position of the debate. And please raise your hand when your name is called. It's Mahesh and Hemant and Bala, appropriately sitting next to each other. And they have been preparing vehemently for their side. And on the opposing side of the ring, against the position, are Samir, Karthi, and Manjula. So these are going to be the individuals. You've heard a little bit about my background. So the first thing we're going to do, starting with Manjula, please let everybody know your background, and so that everybody knows you.
Hi, my name is Manjula Sridhar. I head sales for a company called Orchard Systems. Previously, I've done a startup called August Networks, and I spent quite a bit of time in Lucent, both in US and India, which is probably relevant for today's debate.
Hi, I'm Karthi Modasamy from Qualcomm Ventures. I spent about 12 years in the Valley doing 3 startups there. Came back to India 4 years ago, run Qualcomm Ventures for India and Israel. So I've seen entrepreneurs, innovation happening across 3 different geographies at least, India, Israel, and Silicon Valley. So I'm looking forward to share my views on this topic.
Hi, I'm Samir Kumar. I work with a venture capital firm called Inventus Capital Partners. We do early stage investing in the technology space. Been in the venture capital space for the past 10 years, 15 years before that in sales and marketing in the IT industry in India with 10 plus years in Wipro.
Hi, my name is Mahesh. I wear 2 hats. I help run a venture capital fund called Seed Fund with my partners Bharti Jacob and Praveen Gandhi. And we have, at the fund, we have about, I think, 22, 23 investments already. That apart, as an individual angel investor, I've invested in a dozen odd companies. Prior to this, all of this investing has been in the last 10 years. Before this, I've done a variety of jobs in marketing, media for 10, 15 years before that, across India, China, and the US.
Hi, I'm Hemant Kanakia. I have been all sides of this debate. So I've been an entrepreneur in US, built a company, sold to Ericsson. I have been a venture capitalist, invested in companies in Israel, Sweden, China, and US. And I've also been a researcher at Bell Labs, so I know what real research and innovation is all about. And I have relocated to Delhi and just started an early stage VC fund called Infinity Innovation Fund.
Hi, I'm Bala Gurisabala. I work for Yahoo. I run a group there called Yahoo Entrepreneur Network, which primarily focuses on connecting with the startup and venture capital ecosystem outside, as well as develop a network platform, a bunch of other things, including innovation parts. Prior to this, I was an entrepreneur. Had one leg in India, one leg in the US in the startup that I did. And prior to that, was in the Valley working for Oracle, was managing their CRM product strategy group. And before that, a bunch of other roles in sales and marketing and product management.
Well done. So this is now when everybody's very friendly. So they all like each other. So Mahesh and Samir, you are the team captains. So we're going to take one person per team to start off the debate. And I will remind everyone of the debate topic. So innovation is happening more outside Silicon Valley than inside. So starting for the 4 party, who would you like to go first? Excellent. Please.
We have 5 minutes, so we'll give you a heads up after 3 minutes and 4 minutes, and 5 minutes is hard. No, we better come to the podium. So that's the spirit of the debate, I think. Okay. Right. So we start your time.
Hi. I do want to start by talking about what innovation is and defining that right so that we all are on the same page there. Innovation is commonly meant to, in our hearts to say things that make you rich. But I would like to define it as things that make you better, right? Innovation, and if you define it as things that make you better, my team and I will endeavor to prove that without a doubt, there is a heck of a lot more innovation that happens outside the Valley. There always was, and there will be an even greater amount that happens outside the Valley. I just want you to take your minds back to that famous triangle, that hierarchy of needs that Abraham Maslow drilled into all of us many years ago. If you start with the triangle, it starts with, food, shelter, warmth, clothing, comfort, happiness, money, so on and so forth. And right at the top comes self-actualization. It is my contention and my team's contention that most of the, an even better way for two people to connect is all playing in that self-actualization little top of the pyramid area. That's fine. The US has already climbed the S-curve, is at the top, and those little tiny tweaks are fine, they're innovative. But I do believe you will agree with me when I say that the real innovation that makes things better is innovation that happens in food. How can I innovate to make sure that I can get more food grains per acre without necessarily contaminating the soil? It's in shelter. How can I innovate to make sure a house can be built in $300? It's clothing. How can I innovate to make sure that good, proper clothing can be brought to you? It's in transport. Maybe a company like Redbus, one of my companies that today sells 25,000 tickets a day for people who go from city A to city B, and allowing them to do that without having to go to the bus stop. So it's in these places where true innovation is truly making lives better. Why it doesn't get the shine of Silicon Valley innovation is because Silicon Valley innovation is where the money happens. Facebook has an N into 10 billion dollar valuation. You'll rarely find a bus ticket company with that kind of valuation. I do contend that the real difference is here. The money may not be here. One day the money will be here. The money is not here, but that doesn't mean that it is any less innovative. I believe it is much more so. The amount of innovation that the 6 million people in Silicon Valley do is fine. But what is far more important is the innovation that happens for the 6 billion people outside Silicon Valley. And that is the innovation in everything from our transport systems to how we learn, to a better way to get education, to putting laptops into schools or putting tablets into schools, or to finding a jugaad way of getting transport to happen, or to finding food, clothing, health, medicine, telemedicine, all the things that make life better. If you had a choice before you, which is to extend his life by 10 years or to give him $10 million, I'm sure you'll agree with me that probably the better thing to do is to extend his life by 10 years. There is not even a debate about that, right? And that essentially is the debate that we have today, which is it better innovation to try to extend somebody's life by 10 years, or is it better innovation to make somebody rich, one person rich? During the course of this debate, my team and I will endeavor to prove two things. One, that the mass of innovation that truly makes a difference, not just truly makes you rich, the mass of innovation that truly makes a difference has always existed outside the valley, is now there in even greater numbers outside the valley. My team will also endeavor to prove that the valley innovation model is broken. It has its huge set of issues. It may be fixed, it may not be fixed. My team will also endeavor to state that, yes, we don't yet have enough funding for innovation out here, but that isn't stopping us. Whether it is a jeepney in the Philippines or a vehicle called a jugaad in Uttar Pradesh and Bundelkhand, we have always been innovative. And that amount of innovation comes out of necessity. It doesn't come out of luxury, right? So in this debate, I urge you to join me in agreeing with me in the definition that innovation is about making things better and not just about making people rich. Going forward, my team and I will hope to win your hearts and hope to win your votes at the end of this debate by having, we would love to get these guys joining us on this, on the other side, right? I end my piece. Thank you very much.
So the audience, please remember when points are made that the points are going to be proven so that you can go back and make sure as you vote for them if the points have been as we move on. Okay?
And right, you also have notebooks in your bag, so you can write down if you want to help any team, you can make share and pass it on to both the team captains, and that way you can help them in that debate. So who's going for ladies?
Ladies first.
Not ladies first.
No innovation there.
Now, actually, in the true innovator style, you're not letting the captain speak first. It's the people who do things. Okay. So, thanks, Mahesh, for that introduction. Truly spoken like a marketing person. Completely sidestepped the topic. Right. So let me get the attention back to the topic, right? Innovation is happening more outside the Silicon Valley than inside, right? So, couple of keywords there. First is innovation. So what's innovation? For me, innovation is something that is new, disruptive, and makes things better for people. It also means that a lot of people automatically come and follow that innovation so that it spreads like a wildfire. So which essentially implies that it leads to success. So that's my definition of success, innovation. I agree, what is success can be defined in multiple ways. As Mahesh alluded to, it could be making somebody's life better or extending lifespan, or it could be making someone richer. Both are innovation. There is no doubt about that. Second keyword is happening, right? That implies at this point of time, right? So we need to be very, very focused on that fact. I'm not debating the fact that few years from now on, India or China or whatever is outside Silicon Valley may be leading. In fact, I hope that will become true. Being an innovator myself, I filed 9 patents and I started a company. I would really want that to be true. And I've made Bangalore my home, and I'm paying a lot of EMIs. So I'm not going anywhere. But however, the key point to note is, in this debate, in that sentence, the focus is now, right? The third keyword is more. More implies that there are lot more instances that we can show to you folks that there are more such innovations as per the definition I put in India, China, or elsewhere than in Silicon Valley, right? So if you put all together, my submission to you is, at this point of time, I truly don't believe there's more innovation outside Silicon Valley. My colleague here, Karthi, will walk you through a lot of examples and various instances to prove that to you. And also, I want to reiterate, I'm not saying that I don't want it to be. I would love to. I will be the first beneficiary if more innovation happens here and the ecosystem gets created. Then I could also claim that I'm an innovator, I'm a success, right? But at this stage, I don't see that happening. So with that, I'll close this point. Let my other team take over.
You might want to switch off many more things. I'm known as a flamethrower. So, both the people from the opposing team as well as from my team have been very reasonable people. That's not me. So, I actually have to start out by saying that this debate form is rather strange for me. Most of my formative professional experiences have happened in US. And in US, what passes off as a debate is a bunch of people getting up, grabbing hold of a mic, and giving their monologues about how great they are. And, it is considered a sign of a weakness, actually, to acknowledge even the presence of an opponent over there, right? I mean, if you ever notice how the American teams cheer, or the people cheer the American teams on a football field or somewhere, you will see that. Anyway, so get back to the topic. I think I started out my life as a researcher. I was in Bell Labs. I was privileged enough to be working with people who have built actually or done the foundational work with that most of the people in computer science do right now, people like Dennis Ritchie and Ken Thompson, people who build Unix, C, C++, all that. So I do know what innovation is about. I also started a company which was outside of Silicon Valley. My company was building a data communication router. back in 1996, and it was based in Washington, D.C. So in those days, my job was actually to try and walk up to all those Silicon Valley VC bozos to go out and convince them that no, there is some really good, interesting, innovative stuff that can happen outside of Silicon Valley. And fortunately for myself, I did succeed in convincing a few of them and got funded. So now today my job is a slightly different one. I'm actually going to try and convince you all that innovation is dead in Silicon Valley. I don't think the proposition should be what it stands out to be, saying that there is more, the innovation is going up to the self-actualization level of things. I think it has gone way up. It's gone up into a thin air. It is going to fairly soon disappear. So let me start talking about it, right? You know, if I think the, let me start out by being a little bit more reasonable. I am, I think that US universities on the whole really do a good research. There is a lot of top-notch quality research that takes place out there that isn't happening anywhere else. But that, as we all know, does not quite translate into an innovative product or innovative company. And in fact, with the globalization of the mobility as well as the connectedness, I think a locational advantage of having a great university in one place has kind of disappeared. So that's one of the points. The other thing is, I think if you look at the kind of things that the Silicon Valley VCs currently fund, they're all funding fluffy companies. They are all, and that's being done purposely. I think there is that word that they use, if you haven't heard it before, I've heard it often enough because I sat on boards with many of those, that they're talking in terms of a capital efficiency of the investment that make. You know what a capital efficiency is? What they're basically saying is that if I put in, I think you're going to have to give me some more time, I think. What I think capital efficiency is saying that I'm going to invest X amount of money and I want to see very fast returns. It's an equivalent of a Wall Street motto of a quarterly returns to be thing. It's like a, the Silicon Valley VCs nowadays have actually become very good at funding companies like Twitter and Facebooks and all those kind of things, which add no value to anybody. Those are companies with a shallower and shallower technology under the hood. I wouldn't call Google a shallow in technology, but Facebook, if you look under the hood, there is no technology underneath it. There is no technology under Groupon. They're all funding, quote unquote, a new kind of a business model. And I think that is what is going to ultimately destroy and have a Silicon Valley implode on itself. How am I doing, guys? Okay. Okay, I've got time up. I had many more bombs to throw, but I'll hand it back.
One thing that they, taught you in college when you're doing debate is that stay to the point, okay? I think the other team has done a very good job of not doing that. I think Mahesh was confused between capitalism and socialism, and Hemant was confused about what we're really debating about. So, so let's go back to the topic, and I think we should put the slide up because they are confused there. We're talking about innovation. We're talking about disruptive innovation. Okay, so let's go focused on that. Stay focused on that. In fighting, in boxing, one of the things they say is that the true character comes when the guy can get up after a punch. Get a punch in the gut, and then can you get up? That's when you define whether the guy has character or not. The same thing. Innovation is the same thing, right? It's very good when all things are going well, the whole macro indicators are going well, and you keep doing stuff well. That's easy, because the tide is going up, everything goes up. So that's the easy part, right? The hard part is when you're kicked to the ground, can you come back and reinvent yourself, right? So 10 years ago, the bread and butter in the valley was semiconductors 10, 15 years ago, semiconductors and enterprise software. That's what the bread and butter was. Then it was internet. 2001 happened. Everything, the whole thing, the meltdown was because of Silicon Valley. The whole optical networking, everything kind of shut down, right? When the 2019 happened, I was in the valley, and at that time, people were complaining the same thing. Oh, Silicon Valley is doing a lot of things, very little on the margin. You're better off going to Boulder, you're better off going to Austin, you're better off going to Israel, you're better off going to Boston. At that time, China and India were not that prominently in the map. And a lot of good companies came out of these other areas as well. But when 2001 hit, all areas went down. All areas went. Boston went down, Austin went down, Seattle went down, Southern California went down, Israel went down, Europe went down. But who came out first? You know, the innovation came around Web 2.0. You know, it could be called fluffy, but we are not here to do moral judgment of what is fluffy and what is not. Ultimately, the customers will decide that, the society will decide that, right? I don't think we have to sit in a pedestal here, right? But who came out of that? It is the Valley. If somebody slept in 2000 in the Silicon Valley and woke up in 2011 and then see what the Valley is being driven now, companies like social media and advertising, they would be just like, am I in a different place, a different era? The Valley reinvented completely itself out of what it was, its own strength, destructed it without complaining, and then came back and become a leading player in social media and advertising, right? And then, I mean, I'm from telecom, so one of the things everybody, oh, it's a 100-year-old industry. Telecom is a 100-year-old industry. You know, if you don't understand spectrum, if you don't understand, old Graham Bell and things like that, you cannot do anything in this sector. Is what the typical thing is. And today, where is the crux of the fight happening? Who is innovating and where is the key things in mobile happening? It's not in Europe. It's not in Japan. It's not in Korea. They had a head start of, I don't know, 100 years, 50 years, 40 years, 20 years. Where is it happening? It's between Apple and Google. They are driving the key issues in mobile today. And these guys have no background in mobile. None of these guys have background in mobile. And that's what the innovation is in my mind. You need to be able to disrupt. Say that I don't care, I don't understand, I don't care, but I know what is right? And I know I can go instill that change, right? And that's, we all want everywhere to do much more innovation, and that's why I'm here. I spent 13 years in the Valley. I'm here doing investments in India because we want the next Silicon Valley to come out of here. But let's not forget the argument here. The argument is, where is it happening more? To me, I have seen 3-4 cycles already. It used to be semiconductors, enterprise software. Oh, now it's internet and computing. Oh, now it's Web 2.0 and advertising. Oh, now it's mobile and social media. Every 5 generations I have seen. So the longevity matters. You can't call somebody a great player when he had 1 good innings, right? We call Stenelker a great player because 22 years he has done well, right? So so that's why Silicon Valley is today, even today, is still innovating much more than anybody else, is because of that longevity. So let's get a punch first in these other areas that we're talking about. Then let's see how long it takes to get out. Then we'll say, okay, all right. Yeah.
Okay, good.
That's all I have for now.
You also took less than 5 minutes.
There's no point further, right? You ran out of points. But hey, you know what? I think we have 4 people talking for us, including Karthi, right? So, well, I mean, I'd say, yeah, let's stay on the point. Of course, we are staying on the point. But it's not about English here, right? Obviously, the intent was that, is it happening like today or tomorrow or yesterday? That's not the point. The point is there innovation density, right? Is the rate of innovation happening outside more or in Silicon Valley? To me, it's like a very narcissistic view that what we heard from Karthi right there. If I'm in Silicon Valley, that's exactly the pitch I would give everybody. Right? But that's like saying that, have you guys heard about this World Series of football? How many countries play that?
2 counties.
Yeah, so there you go. And that's the view they talk about. If you are in Silicon Valley, you would want to actually gloat in this, yeah, I slept in 2000 and woke up in 2007. Look how shiny it is. Who cares? If you actually go outside the country and see what's happening around, they don't even know what the capital of another country is. Have you guys seen the Bush world map? Right? I don't have to tell you anything beyond that. That's the world view. And if that is your world view, of course, Silicon Valley is your center of the world. Of course, anything which happens there is happening there, nowhere else. Because what do these snake charmers know anyway? Right? Yeah, so. Well, he stood on point. I'm just saying that he stood on my point. Okay? But let's bring back to the point. If it is all about valuation, yes, there are more billion-dollar companies in Silicon Valley. But we know that innovation is not about valuation. It's about the impact. Now, I'll stay to the point, okay? Tell me when it's 2 minutes because I have a bunch of examples to cite. I'm going to be very, okay, there you go. The second one is, it's not about technology. It's not about technology. It's not about, hey, you know what, I have like, but this was social media, it was this. Where was the problem you were trying to solve? What did it do to the people that you were trying to solve? I mean, I can't imagine what type of problems they were trying to solve there. It's not about the technology, it's about the people. And third is, it's not about anything else, but it's about the relevance that you bring to the table. And with that, I submit there are more innovation happening outside if you were to wake up to the fact that it is happening. If I have to talk about technology itself, I can say, yeah, Amazon is not out of Silicon Valley. I can say Skype is not out of Silicon Valley. I would say Nokia is not out of Silicon Valley. So Qualcomm is not, his own company, not out of Silicon Valley. Right? So the point here I'm trying to make is Silicon Valley is a small bubble and everybody there thinks that the world ends beyond San Francisco, right? Now coming back to that, I would actually focus more on India, much more closer. And I think there are people in this room today who are making that innovation happen. Number one, Dr. Mitta. If you have ever seen his model of Next Wealth, that is innovation, where he is taking access to technology jobs to the villages. Right down to villages. He's created a model in which the percolation of the jobs can go to that level. That is impact. That is impact. He's creating real impact where people never had jobs. Today they have proudly say, I have job. And they have social status. And they can actually get marriage proposals and get married. That is impact, isn't it? Then other one about farmers. We talked about farmers. How many of you guys have heard about Eggaon? How many guys have heard about Nokia Live Tools? Have you ever used it? India is about 1 billion people. Even today, farmers when they harvest, when they have to go to the market to sell their vegetables, they don't know at what price they're going to sell it. They don't know whether they're going to make money to eat the next day or not, right? Simple technology. It's not about technology. It's about the problem they are solving. Now, what do? These guys have created a nifty SMS service which will tell them the day before, here is the price right now. And you can make a call whether to lug your vegetables all the way to the mandi, which is a market, to sell or not. So that you have some food on the table to eat the next day. That is impact. I don't want another place to go and chat. I want food on the table. That is impact, real impact that they bring to the table. Healthcare, 12 million people today are going blind. You know why? You know why? Not because they really have blindness. They develop blindness because they don't know how to take care of themselves. They develop blindness because there's no diagnostic way easily accessible for them, right? Forest Health is a company right here in India. 12,000 people it has treated. It's planning to take the impact to how many? Something like millions of people in the next 5 years. That is impact. You can't beat that with any Facebook there, right? Another thing I will throw at you. Shankara Netralaya, have you guys seen that model? They bring doctors down to the villages. They actually operate on your eye inside a bus. They go from village to village to village. Their efficiency level, they actually use technology so that their doctors can do 4 or 5 times more operations per day than any Western medical doctor can do. That is impact, right? Then, there's sorry, did it die? I think it's not taking the kind of, arguments that I'm making here. Baba Jobs. How many guys have heard about Baba Job? Baba Job. Yeah, Sean. Look at the kind of impact he's doing. He's trying to create a platform. He's actually created a platform where drivers, your plumbers, your gardeners can find jobs. Time out. I can go on and on because I'm then saying time out. I'm going to stop here. But if you want to step out outside after we win this debate and you're going to vote for it, if you want to step out, I will rattle out another 15 such stories. Thank you.
how many people here have smartphones? Okay, and how many people have Android on the smartphones? And how many have iOS? And how many have an OS that was not built in the Silicon Valley? So the numbers just speak, right? So now, I was waiting for that. I was waiting for the technical arguments to twist things out of context. I thought I would rest my case because Android, iOS, etc. are all innovations from the ingredient of innovation. Hopefully we'll get there. As all of us said, I think 6 of us can't disagree with the fact that we are all wishing that innovation in India catches up with what's happening in the Silicon Valley. And we are all hoping it will get there. And we are pretty certain it will get there. But one of the fundamental things that needs to change is that investors like us need to become more risk averse, need to take a little more risk, need to perhaps develop their own understanding of these innovative technologies. Very often entrepreneurs like you come and pitch to us. We don't understand what you're saying, so we say this idea has no legs. That's the fact. How can innovation thrive in an environment like this? And the other key, And the other key thing, and I just need 30 seconds more. 2.5, I don't need it. I think my point is made. But the other thing where innovation thrives is an acceptance of failure. How many people in this room would confidently say that they can fail and meet their families, meet their spouses, meet their parents? 1, 2, 3. 3 hands went up. 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 40 people in this room. I bet you if this was Silicon Valley, 90 out of 100 hands would have stood up and said, we can fail, we can still show our face to our family, to our parents, to our spouses. That is an essential ingredient of innovation as well. So I have nothing more to say. I think with the points that my teammates have made and with the points that my countering team has made, the debate is closed. Thanks.
So we'll take a small break of 60 seconds and you can talk to your team members and then we have a rebuttal round. The audience want to give points to the teams. You can just quickly write down your points and give it to the team captains. They can practice. Questions. No, the questions come in the end. It's about the points you want to give them. If you want to loyal to a team, you want to help them in the debate, just scribble it down. Yeah, just go ahead.
Teammates can jump in if you feel your position is in jeopardy.
Okay, restart.
Silicon Valley is like an echo chamber. Everybody talks to themselves within 10 miles of where they are, and they all reinforce with each other, saying all the innovations have happened within the Silicon Valley. So let's take a look at the record, right? My esteemed opponent over here talked about an Android. My esteemed opponent over here talked about an Android as an example of a great innovation. Well, that came from, or the basic operating system that he talked about came from Finland, which itself was also based on the Unix, which came from New Jersey. Telecom, most of the development took place in San Diego and Qualcomm and the Boston area, or the DC area. Facebook itself, as you might remember, or if you have seen the movie, it came from Boston. Google, its AdSense, which is actually really based on Overture, came from LA. So I keep wondering about the fact that why do they always insist that all the innovation takes place in Silicon Valley? Because, I think Silicon Valley guys are basically nothing but a bunch of marketeers. All that they want to do is to keep on talking to each other and say, here is where all the innovation takes place. The reality is different. Reality is that there has always been a lot more innovation that has happened outside of the Silicon Valley. And increasingly, I've seen a lot more innovation happening outside of the USA. I studied in LCD panel, or LCD factories And if you look at all the research that has taken place, has either taken place in UK or in Kodak, which was on the East Coast, and all the following work was all done in Korea and Japan. So I think it's a mistaken notion, unless, of course, you think that your world consists of only the kind of companies like a Facebook or a Twitter. Again, and another point was being made by my esteemed rivals up here, that there is a resilience and willingness to fail. I think there is a lot more resilience in India and in China, and there is a lot more of a support system available here for people to fail and come back. So I think that it's a mistaken notion to do it. In fact, the most resilient group of people that I have actually invested in is from Israel. Israelis are a hardcore innovators, and they are come up with the companies and have a resilience that you cannot find anywhere else. So again, I think it's a very myopic view when you start saying, yes, we are the great. The thumping of the chest, as my opponents have done, doesn't prove the point. Okay. I think the other point that we have been trying really to make is that innovation is about how much of a disruption it costs your lifestyle, how much of an impact it has. It isn't about $1 billion, right? I mean, that is a province of all the Wall Street guys. And you know how much destruction the Wall Street has made in the world. It's not about the $1 billion companies. It's about how many people you actually impacted. And as you will find that more and more of the because of a globalization, more and more of the humanity is actually improving their lot. They are looking at a different kind of problems. You know, for India and China, it is a lot more imperative to solve our energy efficiency problems because we don't have the money to pay for all that profligate use of gases and oils. So where do you think is going to be the next innovation coming from in clean energy? You know, Vinod Khosla may fund a lot of companies, but I bet that the next great innovation in clean energy is going to be coming out of countries like China and India. Let him add a quick one.
Yeah. So just in terms of numbers, so there's no doubt about it. Every year, Silicon Valley funds 2,000 companies. Every year in the US, outside of Silicon Valley, more than 2,000 companies get funded. And outside of the US, 20,000 companies get funded. So let's not even talk about, I mean, if you talk about the amount of companies out there being funded as one sign of innovation. If you take patents as another sign of innovation, China files more patents than the US, right? Any one Chinese company or one Japanese company has more patents than perhaps all of Silicon Valley companies put together, right? So whether you talk about patents, you talk about intellectual property, you again talk about real impact. I will come back to the key point that there is a justification that innovation for itself is fine, and my point is innovation without impact is masturbation. You know, it's making nobody except you happy. It's an echo chamber, right? Right? Don't look guilty. Yeah, I mean. Yeah, excellent, right? So. Yeah, with each other or with themselves. At this point, I will leave it to my. Yeah, sure, Bala. After that, they can play with themselves. Yeah.
This is a direct rebuttal that the examples I talked about was around farming kind of thing. Obviously, all the solutions that I talked about had some technology underneath, but like we truly believe, the innovation is not about the technology, which is more on the masturbation side, but rather on the impact that it creates. That is what we focused on. All the examples I gave had real technology powering it, right? So, I mean, that's my rebuttal.
Yeah, well, I didn't know you so much. Yeah, who's leading from your side? Karthi, you want to? Okay.
Do you guys know the term identity crisis? So last time they came, it's like, oh, there's this vision about, oh, I'm going to change the world. Yeah, we are staying on the point. Now they are like, oh, he only hit me first. It's like, what is this? It's like, you get. Sorry, guys. Too much identity crisis. Okay, so let's come to the point, right? So, I think they're still not understanding what innovation is and what innovation led impact is, right? I mean, this may be reflecting of their age as well in some ways. Is that they're talking about Facebook and Twitter and it's like, oh, it's fluffy. What do you guys, which world are you living in? Go back 6 months ago, the whole Arab Spring, what happened? Who happened it? Who drove this thing? It's Twitter and Facebook. It's not the, but who drove it? But who drove it? It was Facebook and Twitter that drove it. So you can't argue in one side saying, oh, Twitter and Facebook is just fluff, and now you can say, oh, it didn't happen in the Silicon Valley. Come on, you got to take a position and stick to it, right? So,
The revolution never happened before Facebook.
okay, all right. So even the point about this impact stuff, if people don't understand that Facebook and Twitter is the new news media, is the new thing that is affecting, impacting societies to change, especially in not so democratic societies, then they're completely missing the point. How can we even take their argument, right? So even on the impact, the Facebook and Twitter or what they call as fluff has made much deeper impact, right? And they talk about Israel. I think he probably visited Israel 15 years ago, I think. So one of the things in Israel, the struggle they have in the last 5 years, 6 years, is that they still don't know how to get away from their networking background. They did a lot of innovation in networking 15 years ago, and they created a lot of good companies, and a lot of innovation came from there. But since the 2001, for them to come back up, I go there once every other month, and still the whole country is struggling to get beyond that. Same thing with Boston. Facebook as an idea came out of Boston, but where does it become a mass phenomenon? It came in the Silicon Valley because of the ecosystem out there. So you can go technical and say that, yeah, this is not there, that's not there, but it's not an idea, right? One of the things that we know is that idea is cheap. Idea is dime a dozen, right? It's not idea, right? That can happen everywhere and that will happen everywhere. But where does this idea become a concept, become a reality, become an impactful thing? There's an ecosystem that needs to support it, and that's what Silicon Valley is driving, and which is why we are saying innovation is coming out of the valley. And then he's talking about, oh, Qualcomm is out of San Diego. You are not part of Silicon Valley too. And I'll be very frank here, right? We've been trying to say some of these things and not being able to change the ecosystem. We've been part of the telecom ecosystem for 25 years. Whatever we as a company, Qualcomm, couldn't change, Apple and Google have changed in 5 years. Okay, so I'm not ashamed to say that we are in San Diego, because the amount of impact these two companies out of the valley innovated and then made mobile a mass medium, mobile is the mass medium for most of the developing markets, and that is being driven out of the valley. Even as a San Diego company, I can accept, right? So
you think mobile phones made less of an impact than Google?
what?
I can understand. The logic is a little tough for you, right?
No. This is the identity crisis. It's okay. It's okay. I'm like. So ultimately, the point again is that nobody's saying there is no innovation outside of Silicon Valley. Nobody said that. The debate's argument is not that. The debate's argument is that it happens more there. And there is the reason because of the ecosystem there. And there is, and even today, because of the way they can reinvent themselves, they can drive some of these things much faster than others and give shape much more than others, right? And that's the point. And I think 10 years from now, will it be the same? We don't know. But today, the point is that if you want to take something that can disrupt the market, disrupt the livelihood, disrupt the way things work.
One question. How many companies has Qualcomm funded in the valley and Qualcomm funded outside the valley?
About 4 to 1.
Inside the valley?
For every 4 companies we've done in the valley, we've done 1 outside the valley.
You are the one.
Yeah. Well, we have done in China and Israel as well, but in terms of the number. Yeah.
That's why you're here.
Exactly. Anyway, that's it, so there's no big bang.
Okay. I come from a banking background, and in the last 10 years, there's been so much going on in the financial services industry. And every time something goes wrong, what do we hear? Wall Street has done this, Wall Street has done that, and people want to occupy Wall Street, they want to do whatever. But if you realize 90% of the trading doesn't happen in Wall Street. It happens in the electronic exchanges that are outside. The same with the Silicon Valley analogy as well. Innovation can happen wherever it wants to happen, but the credit goes wherever it wants to go. It's kind of that marketing mantra. The second thing I wanted to point out was talking to a few colleagues outside in the valley. I just came from there myself. So they don't even know what NASSCOM is. So if you don't know what is outside, if you don't see what is outside, then obviously you don't know what's happening there. Thank you.
The panelists also didn't know what NASSCOM.
I'm just reminded of a book that I read recently. In my view, what breeds innovation is creativity, right? I see a lot of creative. In fact, I've lived in Silicon Valley for about 20 years. The proportion of creative minds that I see in Silicon Valley versus here, Bangalore is like a Silicon Valley, is it's nowhere a match, right? The creativity starts in schools. If you go to a normal school here, how many of your kids are spending the time in school doing creative art and learning that breeds having an empathy towards what your customer would need on the road, right? It is right from schools. I see a gap in creative learning and education in the school systems here. What we do well here, I live in India now. What we do well here is linear-minded thinking, a left-brain thinking, which helps in mass production. If 10 people can do a job, one person can do it in an easy way in India with poor quality. But do you call that innovation? For some, it may be innovation, but for me, it has a long ways to go for it to mature and make sense to the rest of the world, right? So we cannot fool ourselves saying things that are happening here, like 10,000 or millions of people getting eye care and so on, as world standard. It's not world standard. It's a standard you have created for yourself, right? So try to aspire to become a world standard, and that only comes with creative thinking and innovation,
Okay.
which is happening in the valley.
Great. We got only 6 slots.
Hello, folks. My name is Prasanna. I work for McAfee. Just two data points here. Okay. Last week, actually, McAfee conducted its annual security conference in Las Vegas. This year, they started a new track called the Innovation Fair. In the Innovation Fair, they demonstrated or showcased about 16 ideas or 16 innovations. Out of those 16, not even one came from the valley. Every one of those 16 actually came from outside. Actually, 3 were actually from India, 2 from Israel, and 1 from an acquisition that McAfee made from the Boston area, and so on and so forth. Second data point, McAfee as a company, like many other small security companies, largely has been growing by acquisition. In the last 2 years, I think McAfee has acquired close to about a dozen companies every time for new technology and innovation. So far, none has come from the Silicon Valley. That proves it.
Great. The next one, yeah, please go ahead.
Quick point here. So I think, against the motion. So Bangalore is aspiring to be the India Silicon Valley. This itself in talks that the Silicon Valley is the topmost, which produces a lot more innovation. Number 2 is the lot of companies out of the Silicon Valley have the presence all over the world, like HP, where I work, have a huge presence in India, have the huge presence of the HP labs, and a lot of the innovation that comes out of the HP labs is seeded in the Silicon Valley. And third thing is the whole Silicon Valley ecosystem, which a lot of the panelists talk about, that a lot of the cities all over the world are trying to replicate that, in itself is the success of the Silicon Valley.
Right.
It's not Silicon Valley versus Bangalore, it's Silicon Valley versus rest of the world.
Sanjay, you go.
Okay, I guess I'm speaking for the motion, which is that more innovation happens outside Silicon Valley. And I think my primary point to that is, I don't think anything disproportionate has come out of Silicon Valley as an innovation. I think what Silicon Valley does better than everybody else is marketing innovation. They complete the product, right? Everything, including everything you can think of in iOS, has been developed in other parts of the world. But Mr. Jobs in particular, and Apple and Google to some extent, have done a great job of completing it and productizing it. I think that's why it appears that a lot of the innovation is coming out of the Valley. I think my view is fundamentally the innovation happened elsewhere, but to the Valley's credit, they pull things together into a product that people can consume. So I'm saying the innovation does not happen in the Valley.
Okay, any more speaker? Maybe the last.
I'm speaking for the motion. I just had one quick point. I think it comes down to which comes first. Does the customer need, which their innovation is looking to address, does that come first and does innovation follow? Or does innovation happen first and is the customer need force-fitted upon that innovation happening? I think a lot of the quote-unquote innovations which have been happening, which have been coming out of Silicon Valley of late have fallen in the latter category.
Okay. So, sir, you want to speak? Yeah. Let that be the last one because we got to.
So up in the Punjab we have this word called jugaad. Hello. No, I'm actually vendor agnostic out here. So I have kids in the, I've got kids in the valley, so I got to protect them too. Okay. So the point is that we have jugaad forever. We have 1.2 billion people, and that's surviving everybody. And you had Sebastian Vettel, who just about a couple of days ago won the Grand Prix, and he goes to Chandni Chowk and he says, "How come people are so happy?" Now that's innovation. I mean, 1.2 billion people, 1/4 the size of the United States, and we are happy. So you got to think about it. I mean, it's a question of perspective. Yes. Now, if somebody said that they breed. The Indian system is bad. The Indian system produced Vinod Khosla downstairs. Indian system produced Kamal Rekhi, also somewhere around. It produced what you call Vikram Pandit. It produced Rajat Gupta. So the same system. So let's not sort of equate different systems. Yes, as an incubator of talent, Silicon Valley takes the cake.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's do one thing. Pari, you want to now? Yeah, right. Let Pari keep why don't you do that? Because, but you won't buy it, you're neutral, right?
I'm supposed to be neutral, yeah.
Yeah. So we have Pari from Zinnov. We have Pari from Zinnov.
It's Pari from Zinnov.
Oh,
yeah.
sorry. Pari from Zinnov. I'm so sorry, right? So, that's okay. So why don't you share your views on the subject?
Okay.
And yeah, you can follow.
Okay. So what I was supposed to do is to summarize what some of these guys talked about and add some of the other additional points. First, we'll talk about against the motion, right? Really, first, talk about Silicon Valley is really the brand. If you look at a lot of the Asian companies, even Samsung or Sony or even Ericsson, a lot of our customers we work with actually started their engineering centers in Silicon Valley because they think that's really where the innovation, the next products are going to come from. That's one. The brand they have created is pulling companies from all over the world, also pulling talent from different countries. Second, a lot of you have seen social network and you'd have seen all the partying happening. Believe me, you don't see that many parties in Silicon Valley. People are really bored and they have to work really, really hard, right? Or else you're bored. So the social infrastructure pushes people to work very hard, and that I think people didn't cover that point. Third is ability to reinvent. And I think the team here really covered that. And Silicon Valley really acts like a company. They take 2 or 3 big bets. In one of the bet they will fail. One of the bet they failed is really in biotech. Nothing much came out. But really they won in Web 2, in enterprise software in internet. Now they took a bet in energy as well as in Web 2.0. Energy didn't work that much, but Web 2.0 has worked really, really well. It's almost like a big company. The whole ecosystem works almost magically together to take big bets. I think that's an interesting point.
Another point is really the mentor network. If you look at the mentor network, what we have in Bangalore or any other city, I don't know about China, but largely in India, it's pathetic, right? Most of the people in the mentor network have never started a company before, and they would like to advise startups on what they need to do. You don't see that in Silicon Valley. You really have people who have done it multiple times, and when you get advice from them, there is a lot of credibility in terms of what they're saying. And impact of innovations, right? And we talked about Android, we talked about Apple. And one thing we talked about, is it really impacting social life? If you look at Apple, they've created 30,000 manufacturing jobs in China, engineering jobs. They again created another 700,000 manufacturing jobs, 30,000 engineering jobs and 700,000 manufacturing jobs just in China in 5 years. It's more than the top 5 IT companies have created jobs in India. And this one company, right? This is impact. This is actually a social impact, right? It's not about something about Facebook. And finally, in terms of, I talked about the global companies' presence, and more we believe that even Indian companies, Infosys, Wipro, TCS, a lot of these companies are going to have their teams in Silicon Valley to drive innovation. We already have Wipro having a team there. So we're going to see a lot more of these companies having presence in Silicon Valley. Talking for the other side, one key thing which is missing in Silicon Valley, again, Mahesh made this point, really context of the next 2 billion people. They really don't have context. And those kind of innovations are really had to come from India. If you look at Google built their map edit product based out of Bangalore. Because this is the only place the product managers understood in emerging markets, there is no maps. You really have landmarks. And you have to create a product which works based on landmarks rather than really, north and west directions. That product came out of India. You talk about GE, the ECG product came out of India. Intel building a low-cost mobile device for the rural market and emerging markets coming out of India. TI, low-cost chipset coming out of India. UID, the largest, Sanjay worked on contributing to that, right? The largest biometric database in the world coming out of India. So a lot of this, Silicon Valley just doesn't have context. So India has context, China has context, and these innovations are going to come from here. Second, truly, if you look, I've read Clayton Christensen's book on Innovator's Dilemma. A lot of larger companies, because of fear of cannibalization, they really don't work on the next set of innovation. And you take Intel, for example, right? A lot of innovation came out of Israel. A lot of innovation came out of Austin, not in Santa Clara, because Santa Clara was stuck on a certain innovation they already had done. Same with Intuit. A lot of innovation came out of the acquisition they made outside of Silicon Valley than in Silicon Valley. Right? Prasanna made a point about McAfee. That's clearly a point where the newer innovations, which is disrupting the existing product, will come outside of the main location, even for Silicon Valley companies. And third is, Silicon Valley is a culture of instant gratification. You don't see research, which is 10 years of fundamental research, and it's driving innovation. A lot of times it's really about putting something together and designing something very cool and putting something together very, very fast, and you can make money in a very short duration. So that's again a Silicon Valley culture. And fourth point I want to make is really the talent, the market for talent, at least in the top part of the talent, is getting flattened, right? Right now, Google and Microsoft pays the same salary for the top talent in Bangalore, in Hyderabad, compared to how much they pay in Silicon Valley. For top talent, there is not enough reason today to move to Silicon Valley or move out of India, move out of China to work on those locations. First of all, the top companies in Silicon Valley have presence in these locations. There are a whole bunch of startups, and you can make more money than what you can make in Silicon Valley. So that way, the talent is actually staying back in these locations. That way, innovation is also going to spread across the world. Finally, in terms of there are new ecosystem which is required for innovation. I was talking to our customers at Mercedes-Benz. They said one of the expectations for their customers is to have an iPad dock in the back seat and have the iPad dock control all the different aspects of the car. And this is something which is consumer electronics, and an auto company is looking at it. Look at Bangalore. Mercedes-Benz has a center, Samsung has a center, Google has a center, Microsoft has a center, Intel and Qualcomm has a center. This kind of ecosystem is available only in Shanghai and Bangalore. There's nowhere else in the world. All of these companies have R&D centers. This will drive innovation, right? And that kind of innovation is starting to happen in Bangalore and China, and we don't see that in Silicon Valley. So these are some of the arguments for pro and against both the sides. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our time is coming to a close, and it's been very interesting for me being from Silicon Valley, sitting to the side and listening to all of this. And I have just one perspective to share. Over the last year, I've spent a lot of time in IIT campuses, and there are brilliant ideas, anywhere from a welding machine that fits in your hand that welds titanium together at a fraction of a cost, to lighting that is at a fraction of a cost that also purifies water, solar energy that will rock your world. And I might just offer a suggestion that it isn't that innovation that's lacking in India. It's the channel to fertilize the innovation. It's that belief that can happen. So when you hear about the students that left college and got funded, that mechanism does not exist. So if you go through the campuses in India, you will find just as many brilliant ideas. The population in India, between the productive ages of 16 to 35, is larger than the entire population of the United States. The education is at a higher standard. There is innovation all through India. It's what's here and what's here, and it's our belief to want to fund it. So that perhaps brings a new perspective as well to our debate. And with that, we are now ready to cast our vote. So we're actually going to just do this by show of hands first for the 4. Yes?
So how many of you support for the motion team? Shall we do a count? Does everyone want to do a count? No, I think we it's not the Florida election. There is no pregnant chat here. Sorry?
Okay, let's go for the against and see how many.
What about you? Put your hands up.
Okay, I think
Okay.
I think it's the
Against the motion, I'm actually with.
okay against
Against.
and
okay.
4.
Okay.
4.
4 is.
Yeah, 4. So great debate. Thank you and.